Now, Graham is going to be chatting for about 30 minutes. So, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and let's warmly welcome, all the way from the UK, Graham Cluley.
Thank you very much, Baxter. Appreciate that. And hello, everybody. Thank you for attending the talk and coming here to the third Kayaks conference as well. It's such an important subject, how we deal with attacks on industrial control systems. My name is Graham Cluley, and I'm a bit of a programmer. That's how I started. I've been working in computer security for about 25 years now, and I started off writing antivirus software. And I've got to be honest with you, as a computer programmer, I'm naturally somewhat introverted, okay? And maybe some of you work, I know a lot of you work in IT or in operational technology as well, and there is something about this industry which makes some of us very, very naturally introverted. You know, it isn't always very comfortable, which makes me think, how on earth did I end up on a stage like this, with a microphone, with the lights glaring straight at me? How on earth did my career come to this? But somehow or another it has. Now, I really enjoyed the panel session earlier. And one of my key takeaways, which I took from that, was it is so important for us in this industry to network, to share best practices in order to really gain some sort of benefit and to work out what we're going to do to fight the attackers. And I thought, well, how can I try and make sure that that really is happening at this conference? And then I thought, we can have some audience participation. I thought maybe I can get some of you to actually prove that you do believe in networking and in sharing best practices. So what I'm going to ask you to do, don't worry, there's no shark-infested custard that I'm going to drop on top of you. I want all of you to stand up. Okay? Come on. Stand up. I know, it's been a long day already. Excellent, good, you're doing that. Those people at the back, you always feel comfortable coming forward and you'll be able to hear me a little bit better as well. And what I'd like you to do is there are loads of other experts, loads of your peers here in this industry right now in this room. The problem is, because like me, you might be a little bit socially inadequate. You might find it a little bit difficult to get to know strangers. I want you just to turn to each other and either high five, boom, or shake hands, or, do the fist bump, boom, which is what the kids do these days, and tell that person who you are and what you do, okay? You've got 2 minutes to do that. Find someone you don't know and go boom, or high five, okay? Because then, next up, that's it. Come on, you're doing it. That's fantastic. Come on, yeah, I love this. That's it. Because then, next time there's a break, you know someone. You've now got a buddy. You can go and grab a sandwich with them later. You can discuss all your industrial control system woe. You can dive deep into the PLCs and the ICS. You can do all that now. All right. Some of you are enjoying it too much. You'll have to carry on those conversations during the next break, okay? There'll be an opportunity to do that. But thank you for doing that, because it's so important. Oh, excuse me. Right, sit down. Crikey. It's my turn to talk now. Okay, great. Well done for doing that. Let's get on with the conversation, because what I want to talk to you about happened 10 years ago. That's where my story begins. It begins in 2007. Do you remember how different the year 2007 was? It was very different. There's some very significant things which happened 10 years ago. Not least, the introduction of one of these. I've got one somewhere. Unless I left it somewhere. Crikey, now I'm worried. Somewhere about my person. Oh yes, here it is. Got one of these. How many people have got one of these, or have they got that one from the Google chocolate factory instead? Exactly. Everyone these days is carrying a supercomputer around with them all the time. Incredible computing power, giving you constant access to the internet and the web. It means we always have a camera on ourselves. We have a device here which people can potentially track. A device here which people can work out where you are in the world. You are constantly in contact. The world has changed in 10 years absolutely enormously in a way we never imagined. It's not just the existence of that device, it's everything which has come as a consequence of that as well. That happened 10 years ago today. The world changed, and the world continues to change, and Lord knows what on earth the world will be looking like in 10 years' time as we continue, as we begin to have driverless cars, as we begin to completely change through technology, the internet, the web, the cloud, how the world changes. And of course, this is going to have an impact on us, and already has an impact on us in terms of industrial control systems and how we protect them. Because what you are doing now with your industrial control systems, which you weren't doing 20 years ago, is you're connecting them. You're connecting them to the internet. You're connecting them to your devices. You're making that information available so that you can be more agile, so you can get better visibility as to what's going on. And that has implications. But the reason why I am talking about the year 2007 specifically is because of this piece of malware. This is where our story begins. This is the Black Energy Trojan Horse. It's actually a DDoS attack tool. That's a distributed denial of service attack tool used by hackers and crackers and anyone who wants to cause some mischief to launch and bombard a website with so much traffic that the website falls over. You just give it information as to which website you want to bring down, you click a button, and boom, that website may well come down. If you have a lot of computers under your control, then you can actually use a botnet to control and demand that a website effectively falls over through the sheer amount of traffic. It was written by a hacker called Crash. All hackers, of course, have to have a really cool name. They can't just call themselves Bernard. In this case, he calls him Crash or CR4SH because he's so elite. That's what the hackers are doing. And in 2007, the author of Crash posted a message on LiveJournal. Now, LiveJournal, if you don't know, tends to be frequented by people who are into romance fiction and blogging about, I don't know, sort of all kinds of lovely, fluffy unicorn sort of things. But it's also sometimes used by hackers. And this particular guy posted a message noticing that he had been spotted by the media and that he had become famous. And so he linked to a news story about himself because he found out that his piece of malware had actually been used in a major attack. And it had been used in a major attack against Citygate. What happened was the attack launched against Citygate allegedly stole millions of dollars because a modified version of his malware was used to allow hackers to gain access. And the reason why other hackers were able to use Crash's malware to gain access was because Crash had decided to sell his malware. He sold his malware in 2007. He only charged $700 for its source code, which is, quite frankly, not very much at all. And with that in your hands, you could then go and develop other forms of malware if you so wished. And the malware began to be spread. And it began to be spread by techniques like this. This is an email which was sent out in 2014 containing a poisoned spreadsheet. And users would open the attachment, they'd unzip it, open it up, and bam, their computer would become infected as a consequence. In May 2014, Ukrainian companies began to receive emails like this. There is an email with a malicious attachment once again. This is the latest version of that Trojan horse, the Black Energy Trojan horse, pretending to come from a government agency. And the targets included the Ukrainian rail service. And because the recipients of these emails believed that they were being contacted by the government, because the email looked legitimate to them, because it was using social engineering techniques to trick people into believing this looks like an email I should read, people were clicking on the attachment, they were getting infected, and they had opened up a back door through which hackers could gain access to their computers. And this has obvious consequences. Later in 2014, the same malware was being adapted to include SCADA-related plugins. And it was being sent to ICS and energy sectors all around the world, including the United States, Europe, NATO, It's a new level of sophistication, well above the original origins of this piece of malware, which was simply launching denial-of-service attacks. Now, they were specifically targeting organizations which had industrial control systems at their heart, because that's what they were looking for. They would infect systems, and then they would begin to do reconnaissance. What is this computer attached to? What other information has it got there? And if it had ICS-related content on it, then it became of primary interest to the hackers. Embedded inside the code were some references to a cult science fiction book. Does anyone know the book Dune? Frank Herbert's book, Dune, which have these great big sandworms, and it's like a fantasy set on a foreign planet. Well, this hacking group became known as Sandworm because they had embedded inside it some references to the Dune books. And this was a politically focused gang. They were interested in securing information, intelligence gathering, and they were using the black energy tool, which was now an espionage tool, in order to steal information and gather data about organizations. And it was making use of a Microsoft Windows zero-day vulnerability to gain access to systems belonging to NATO, the European Union, and, of course, energy sectors around the world. And you have to begin to ask yourself, who would have an interest in launching that kind of attack? And maybe we'll get some clues about that as we go forward. Oops. There we go. So we move on now to December 2015. And I'm going to take you to the city of Kiev. Here it is, the beautiful city of Kiev in Ukraine. Just a normal, regular day in December 2015. You can probably guess what is about to happen, because Ukrainian power companies were being sent a Word document via email. Here is the Word document. And the Word document is written in, I don't speak Ukrainian, so I have to apologize for that. But there's some form of social engineering which is trying to trick you into clicking on the button at the top, which is a message displayed by Microsoft Word. So Microsoft, to their credit, do warn people about malicious, or warn people about macro content inside Microsoft Office documents. Because Microsoft, years and years ago, decided we don't just want Word and spreadsheets, Excel spreadsheets to be pure data. We want to be able to embed commands inside them as well in a macro format. Personally, I think that's a disastrous thing to do, but I come from the world of antivirus. But when you get a message these days, well, what happens these days, if you open a macro-enabled document or spreadsheet in your version of Microsoft Word, you get this message, and it says, security warning, macros have been disabled. Do you want to enable content? And so what the bad guys do is they customize a message inside their poisoned document, which effectively, albeit in Ukrainian on this occasion, says, if you see a message saying enable content, please enable the content, and then you'll be able to get the rest of it. At that point, your computer is now infected. Now, maybe you are wise and savvy enough not to click on that button if you get a message like this. But can you be sure that every member of staff inside your organization would make the same decision? It's hard to say for certain that they would, because humans often make very bad mistakes. So, December 2015, having been hit by this Word document, this is what happened. Of course, the lights got knocked out. 700,000 people were left without power for several hours because the electrical grid was knocked off in Ukraine. So parts of Kiev no longer had power, which was fantastic for IT people who wanted to get to know each other, because you could have a romantic candlelit dinner with each other. Here you are. If you Google stock images of Ukrainians having a romantic dinner by candlelight, this is what you find. Thank you, Google, for helping me with that particular slide. But it wasn't just knocking out the electric system. It was also wiping out hard drives as well. And so this particular piece of malware didn't just give hackers access. What it would do is, of course, it would wipe out the data, wipe out the hard drives, making it much more difficult to restore and to recover. It's much harder for the power plant operators to restore their operations automatically because everything had been wiped. And this is a trend which we are seeing in malware attacking this sector more and more. Manual restoration of compromised computers is obviously going to be take longer than you would want compared to automated systems. At least they had backups. At least they were able to recover in some form. Prevention, though, is always better than cure, a theme which you are going to hear more and more during the course of the day. So that was December 2015. 1 year later, what happens? These emails are being sent out. This time, we have an email which has been sent to Ukrainian electric companies with an XLS file attached, not a Word document anymore, an Excel spreadsheet, a poison spreadsheet designed to trick victims into opening it, claims to be an official document. Your users would click on the attachment, and bam, the hackers are now in, and they are able to exploit information on your computer. And this is happening just a few months ago, in December 2016, which means that you turn from something like this, Kiev looking like this on a normal day, to Kiev looking like this. All the lights have gone out. Pretty damaging stuff. And that's what happened for some hours in part of Kiev because of a cyber attack. The local electric company did what everyone does in these sort of emergencies. They went onto Facebook, just like you would as a regular user. You think, oh, crikey, I'll go on Facebook if I can and post an update. They post an update as well. Here's their chief information systems officer, and he's posted a message saying and confirming that the reason for the outage was because of external interference through the data network, which is a polite way of saying we've been hacked by Russia. They don't like to say Russia. It was Russia who did it, okay? Keep it under your hat. So, who disabled the electric grid? Well, you have to ask who on earth would have an interest in doing such a thing. The finger naturally does point towards Russia. Could have been other people. It's always very hard to attribute attacks like this. Will they try it again? Well, they did it the year before. They did it last December. I think it would be a brave person who would bet they wouldn't try it again. Maybe they'll indeed be doing it this December. We'll have to see. Or maybe they won't actually wait that long either. But attacks like this are happening all over the world. And there are plenty of other incidents of industrial control systems being attacked, of course. And I'll give you some examples. This is the Bowman Dam, the Arthur Bowman Dam in Oregon on the Crooked River. It's a quite big dam. It's 245 feet tall, 800 feet across, and it's looking after and helping to irrigate many farms in the region, okay? And the authorities in America they did some investigation, they were doing some surveillance, and it came to their determination that there was a hacking group targeting the Bowman Dam. And this is the biggest Bowman Dam in America. Turns out, though, the hackers weren't actually attacking this dam, which is what the authorities originally thought. Instead, they were attacking this one. A lot smaller. It's about 15 feet across and 2.5 feet high in terms of the dam. But it is connected to the internet. It's a sluice gate, which is in New York State, which is a different Bowman Dam. And this is the one which the hackers were able to gain access to. And the SCADA system suffered an attack on this system around about, I think it was in late 2013. Now, the good news is that the authorities were able to determine who was behind this particular hack. And what they identified was, sorry, I'm having some trouble with the clicker. Dink. There you go. The determination was that the attack was being organized by an Iranian hacking gang. And they claimed to have gained access to the control systems. The Department of Homeland Security said the attackers had managed to access computer files, they'd read files, they'd taken data and personnel information, as well as gained access to the dam's control system as well. They were never going to do as much damage as they might have done on that really great big dam, but still damaging that this occurred. There is They did, however, identify who one of the hackers was. Let's take a look at him. I think we might need more batteries or a different clicker. Here he is. This is one of the key Iranians who was involved, and so the authorities have named him. His name is Hamid Farouzi, 34, employed by 2 Iranian companies connected with the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. And the authorities in America have released sort of wanted posters for him in connection with this hack which occurred. And of course you think, well, this it sounds pretty serious, even if it was a small dam that they hacked. The great news is, however, that actually the dam itself was out of order at the time. And so he wasn't able to cause too much of a problem on that particular occasion. But there have been other attacks as well. In 2013, a hacking group called Energetic Bear. I don't know where they come up with these great names for these hacking groups. It's also known as Crouching Yeti or Dragonfly. They used remote access Trojans, including one called Havex. And what it would do is it would look for vulnerable ICS systems managing electrical, water, oil supplies, gas, data supplies. Over 1,000 energy firms were affected by the Energetic Bear gang. And their intention was to cripple physical systems using their malware, using their ability. So once they were in, again, they found out across the network, seeing what systems that particular computer had access to and what they might be able to do with that. And they were infecting people in a variety of ways. Yes, they were infecting people by sending them emails, as we saw earlier. That's one of the primary ways in which organizations are getting hit by malware today. They were also launching watering hole attacks, which is where you infect a website, a third-party website which you know that people you are targeting are visiting. You infect that website because maybe it hasn't been properly patched in some way, and then any visitor to that website gets hit by a zero-day vulnerability or a bug in Adobe Flash or Java, which then infects their computer. And so they were doing that. But the other method by which they were infecting people was by, click, there you are, by actually changing the downloads of the ICS plugins. So if you were going to your industrial control system vendor and getting patches for your software and getting updates from your ICS vendor, those updates themselves had been tampered with by the hackers. So you've now got a problem in your supply chain. The people you trust to actually give you secure updates to this software, in some cases, those updates themselves have been tampered with by the attackers in order to infect those sort of systems. Which is pretty serious, because if you can't trust the supply chain, what on earth can you trust? And even if you do know that the vendor themselves haven't been tampered with in some fashion, can you be confident that other hardware which you might be buying hasn't been tampered with en route? Now, the majority of organizations who were targeted, it was the United States, Spain, France, Germany, Turkey, Poland, countries all around the world were being targeted. Over 1,000 companies being hit by these kind of activities. Notably, Russia didn't seem to be affected. You can make your own assumption as to why that might be. It's hard to prove that this particular attack was sponsored by the Kremlin, but a lot of us in the computer security industry believe that this was a state-sponsored attack for precisely that reason. Now, during the course of the conference, you're going to be hearing a lot about this piece of software. This is Shodan, a search engine you can use not to search for pictures of animated cats or YouTube videos. No, this is a search engine which you can use to scan the Internet of Things, including ICS and SCADA systems. So you can find out about the power plants, the factories, the buildings, the water treatment facilities, which are connected to the Internet, directly connected to the Internet. And this is a valuable tool for the hackers. It's a very useful tool for the good guys as well, and I would recommend that you use it in order to determine what actually you have connected to the Internet, which you may not be aware of, but it's also used by bad guys as well. And in many cases, these devices connected to the Internet are still using default usernames and passwords. And in the United States alone, over 57,000 industrial control systems are connected to the Internet. So there's a huge amount of potential targets out there. And if you ask the Department of Homeland Security, they'll tell you that there are hundreds of reports of attempted hacks against industrial control systems every year. That's just in the United States. But this is, of course, a global problem, which is going on here. Now, an obvious question is, well, who's behind all this? And why? Well, if there are so many attacks happening, if it is possible to do this, why aren't we seeing more of it? And I think the reason is people are frightened of mutually assured destruction, right? Because if they take out an oil system here, chances are that country's going to do the same back. And right now, there's not a huge benefit in doing that. There are some people who would be interested in doing that. If your country has a genuine enemy, someone who absolutely wants your country destroyed, then yes, they might do that. And of course, terrorism, they may have an inclination for doing something like this as well. However, the thing is, many of the terrorists aren't that skilled when it comes to computer hacking. Despite all the hype you may read in the media, most of the expertise is actually held at a state level instead. That's where the majority of that kind of intelligence is actually held. So Russia certainly has the ability to do this. China certainly has the ability to do this as well. But China, I believe, isn't that interested in doing it at the moment. I think some countries are hacking into systems and find out about industrial control systems in order to gather intelligence, but they're not necessarily doing it with destruction in mind. So it wouldn't make sense, for instance, for China to launch an attack against industrial control systems and bring down energy systems in other parts of the world, because what China really wants to do is sell you stuff, right? That's their big move right now. They're not really into global domination and destroying you. What they want to do is they want to sell you everything, because China is the country which is manufacturing everything in the world. Russia, however, doesn't have such a booming economy and may have more inclination and temptation to launch these kind of attacks. But right now, I don't think, although we shouldn't forget about the threat of rogue nations and terrorists, I think we need to sit back a little bit and say, okay, we need to be aware, but it doesn't seem to be happening on a grand scale right now, the actual destruction, the mutually assured destruction. Now, we heard on the panel, I think it's a really good point to make, a fundamental difference between IT and OT. Basically, with operation technology, you are turning IT on its head. IT, it's all about keeping stuff confidential, protecting the data, because IT systems are holding and storing personal information, for instance, or credit card information. You're not doing that on your industrial control systems. With OT, turn it round. It's about availability. You need those systems to be constantly available. You need to be able to provide electricity. You need to be able to provide energy, because if you can't do that, that's going to be a problem. What's happening now is we have these two things crashing into each other. You've got two teams. The people who built the operational technology are trying to work closer with the teams who built the IT as well. They're two different disciplines. They've got two different ways of thinking. And as we merge these things, there is inevitably going to be more and more friction. And that's one of the challenges and one of the reasons why you guys need to talk to each other to work out a better way to do this. But ultimately, if systems go down, if power becomes unavailable, that's a huge problem for OT, but not for IT. So the standard piece of advice you will hear is you need to keep systems that perform critical roles segregated from the rest of the network. It's a fantastic idea. Unfortunately, it's completely and utterly impractical in my opinion, because you are connecting these devices. That is the way that we're going. We heard earlier about connecting things to the cloud as well. 21st century business requirements mean that we need these systems to be properly integrated with each other. And the average industrial control system has 11 direct connections to the internet. And if you find that hard to believe, I would urge you, go back to your firms and take a close look. And you might be surprised just how much these devices are becoming connected to each other. The attackers are becoming increasingly inventive in how they attack your environment. Sometimes it'll be email, sometimes it'll come in via USB or hard drive, or via the modem, the VPN. It may be software which you're installing, which has been tampered with, or really significant threat, the insider, rogue employee, someone coming into your organization, maybe it's the people who vacuum around your PCs at the end of the day, they could be plugging something into your computer, and that could be a significant problem. And of course, if you want to know about these systems, it's easy. It's only a Google away to get the definitions and find the systems, and if you're using default names and passwords, that's going to be a huge problem. So, very quickly, because I've already run out of time, let's move on a little bit. My clicking is... Sorry? That direction? Oh, now you tell me. Anyway, it's not doing it for me, so I'll just say this. Ask yourself this: who are your company's enemies? What are your country's enemies? Who would benefit from your operations being disrupted as well? And what might tomorrow's threats look like? Because we've seen this huge surge in ransomware affecting people's personal computers, we are now seeing experts building proof of concept ransomware attacks for industrial control systems as well. That could be a temptation going forward for financially motivated, organized gangs who will say, you won't get your system back up and running again unless you pay us some money in Bitcoin. I've spoken long enough. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.